Okay, so let's start with something called as shorter is better. Basically, shorter is better is nothing but it is a series of you know tricks and tips for the SAT section. Okay, so shorter is better has three parts. Okay, first part is known as redundancy. Okay, now what is redundancy? Redundancy is nothing but repetition of words, okay, with same meaning in the same sentence. Now, what happens many a times when we are trying to, say something like, for example, she is a very bright and intelligent girl. Okay, so what happens? You say she is a very bright and intelligent girl. Okay, so what happens now? Many bright is the same context of intelligent. Okay, the contextual meaning. I'm not talking just about literal meaning. Okay, it is also the contextual meaning. Also, if it is repeated, it is known as redundancy. So basically, when you use more than one word to describe one feeling, that's what is called as redundancy. Okay, so in American English, people believe that you are supposed to have shorter sentences. The shorter your sentence, the better. Okay, so the logic is very simple. When they believe in short things, so they prefer to use any one of these words only to describe the girl. For example, if I have to say he is a very handsome and good looking boy. Okay, handsome and good looking, both of them mean the same thing. So you have to choose one of them. Now, in the exam, 95% of the time, only one of these options will be given in your options. Like, for example, A will be no change. Okay. B will be given as bright. Okay. C will be given as some XYZ word, which can be eliminated. And D will be some ABC word, which can be eliminated. So you will directly choose option B, ball. Sometimes what happens is when they want to, just make it a little difficult, what they'll do is they'll give A as no change. Okay. They'll give B as bright. Okay. Then they'll give C as intelligent. Okay. And D, they'll give us some XYZ word which can be eliminated. So A and D get eliminated. You're left with B and C. Now, how do you choose between two words who have the same meaning? You just go by the tone of the passage. Tone of the passage. If the tone is formal, you choose. So this tone is divided into two types: formal tone and informal tone. Okay. So if the tone is formal, you would choose a formal word. And if the tone is informal, you would choose a informal word. Did you understand my point? Formal context will be something that you use to communicate with your, with your colleagues, your teachers, or people in higher authorities. Now, when I say he is a handsome and good looking boy, I will not use good looking. I'd rather use handsome in the formal context. Are you understanding my point? Or I'd rather use the word attractive. Are you getting my point, what I'm trying to explain? So that is what is redundancy. Got it? Am I clear? Any doubts still here? Anyone, any doubts? Okay, so that's what is redundancy. That's one trick. So what is the entire trick? It says in the same sentence, when you have words that describe the same feeling, more than one word that describe the same feeling, you're supposed to use only one of those words. You cannot use both the words or whatever number of words are used to describe the same feeling. Got it? Understood? Am I clear? Now, next. So redundancy is basically an error, okay? Then next we have something called as, what is the next thing that we have for the people for whom the portion is done? After redundancy, what do we have? We have something called as wordiness. Okay, we have something called as Wordiness. What is wordiness? Kazim Hussain, what is wordiness? Wordiness. So wordiness basically means that, so it's a very simple trick. The actual, name of the topic, shorter is better, is because of this particular trick. So this particular trick says, if all the options, if all the options given have the same meaning, have the same meaning, then the shortest amongst them is your answer. The shortest amongst them is your answer. Got it? Did you understand the point? Like, for example, if in the sentence it is given, she took us for a dangerous voyage. Okay, and a dangerous voyage is underlined. Okay, so A option will be no change. Okay, option B will be a voyage of dangerous sort. Okay, then option C will be a voyage whose nature is dangerous. Okay, then option D will be a voyage that was dangerous in itself. Okay, all the options have the same meaning, that is that it's a dangerous voyage. That's what is the primary meaning. So automatically, because all of them have the same meaning, you will choose option A. Now, when can you apply this trick? When can you apply, or what type of questions can you use this trick on? So the questions which are very lengthy, okay, which are very lengthy, have where the options are very lengthy, the first thing before going and actually using your brain to understand what's going on, you should actually first read all the options, check if they have the same meaning, then you can directly apply this trick. Understand one thing, shorter is better is one trick that can solve many complicated questions. So whenever you see a lengthy question, or a question with lengthy options, it's very important that you first pay attention to this particular trick, because what will happen then is you will be able to sort it out. Understood? Got my point? You'll not waste your time on that particular question, because if you will start to use some other trick to solve that question, it will take a lot of time. Okay, so understand one thing, many complicated questions in the SAT writing section can be solved by very simple topics, and this is one topic which comes in very, very handy. Got my point? Understood? Even topics, even questions where they ask you which is the best way to join these two sentences. Okay, that question also, many a times the shorter is better. The wordiness trick works. Got my point? But the only rule for this trick is all your options need to have the same meaning. Even if they are using different words and synonyms, that's not an issue. But they should have the same meaning. That's the logic. And the shortest one will be your answer. Shortest one so much so that you can literally count the number of words as well. Understood? Got it? That's wordiness. Okay. Now come down to the third and the final trick that we have. That's called as passive voice. Okay. Now, what happens with passive voice? So it is always said in SAT that passive voice options are wrong. Okay. So what is active voice, passive voice? So basically active voice options are correct and passive voice options are wrong. Why? Because passive voice options are longer in nature. Okay. And active voice are shorter. That is why whenever in an option you see any passive voice option, just delete it. Okay. Now, how do you identify something is an active voice? Basically, If I say I ate the ice cream, I ate the ice cream. So what happens here? The action doer comes first, and the action receiver or the object comes later. Okay, that's how you identify its active voice. How do you identify if it's passive voice? Ice cream, or we say the ice cream was eaten by me. So whenever you have the object first and the action doer later, that's when you identify its passive voice, and the word by clearly signifies a lot of times that it is in passive voice. Understood? So directly eliminate all passive voice options. Got it? But one place where passive voice options can be considered is during your modifiers part. Understood? Got my point? During your modifier part, that's where you have to remember that passive voice options can be considered. Okay, but even while considering the passive voice option, one thing that you can remember is, even if they are passive voices, are passive voice sentences are usually longer in nature. In case of modifiers, you will be able to see that it's only that option is making sense. Understood? Got it? Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that is shorter is better for you guys. Okay, now let's move on to something called as dictions, idioms, and register. Another very important topic. Okay, now when it comes to dictions, idioms, and register, it's a very small and a minute topic. But what you need to remember with this particular topic is, when you deal with diction, idioms, and register, you need to by heart a lot of things when it comes to this particular chapter. Okay, so so the idioms that we have usually in English that we are taught in school, these are not those idioms that we are talking about. Okay, these are different. So let me first show you the PDF. Yeah. So can you see? Yeah. So diction, what happens with diction is, what is the meaning of diction? Diction is nothing but author's choice of words. Diction is nothing but author's choice of words. Okay. So suppose if I have to say I had a bad day. Okay, I had a bad day. This is my choice of word. Bad is my choice of word to describe my day. Okay, but Mayuka is like, what, ma'am? You're using such basic English. We are SAT students. We'll use, better words. So she'll say, I had an obnoxious day. Okay, so the context is the same, that obnoxious and bad, contextually, they mean the same thing, that is bad. Okay, so Mayuka, to describe her feelings, she has used the word obnoxious, and I, to describe my feelings, have used the word bad. Okay, so it is author's choice. Whoever is written the passage or writing the passage or is speaking, whatever, it is their choice. That choice is called as diction. Now, why is it important for us? It is important for us because of this something called as register, and because we believe in something called as parallel structure. Parallel structure basically means maintaining consistency. Okay, so to maintain this consistency, this diction and register need to be in sync with each other. Are you getting my point? So what happens with register is basically tone of the passage. Tone of the passage. Okay, when it comes to tone of the passage, they are of two types, like I've explained you before: formal tone and informal tone. Okay, now tell me, if the tone is formal, I will use bad or obnoxious. What word will I use? I will use the word obnoxious rather than using bad. Okay, and if the tone is informal, I will use bad. Now, it's not wrong in a formal tone to use bad. Okay, it's not wrong to use in the formal tone bad, but because it's a formal tone and we have various sorts of words that can be inculcated, so that is why obnoxious will be given more preference. So what do you basically understand out of this particular topic is both diction and register need to go hand in hand. So whenever you have such questions, see, look at this question here, where there are different words given to you. It's very important that you take the register into consideration as well. Now, what is given here? See, in less than a year, however, they exhausted their supplies and were forced to return to England. If you will read all the words now, exhausted, expended, diluted, undermined, they somewhere or the other have the same contextual meaning. Okay. So what happened? People usually directly go for shorter is better in such questions because the contextual meaning is the same. So they will say diluted is the answer. No, that's where you have to just when it's single words. Okay, when it's related to single words like this, and there is a set of different words given to you in the option, that's where you have to check the meaning plus the register as well. Now, if I just replace all the words here instead of exhausted, so if I say in less than a year, however, they expended their supplies and were forced to return to England. Expended their supplies. What is the meaning of that? Can anyone tell me? What will be the meaning if I say expended my supplies? What will be the meaning? I have spent my supplies. I don't spend. Normally, when you have some supplies, you use them. You don't, spend them. Are you understanding my point? So that does not fit with the register of the paragraph that is given. So that is why expended gets eliminated. What is the meaning of diluted? Diluted means what? Whatever is the existing quality, you lower the quality level by using, by either overusing them or underusing them in this context. So diluted also is not possible. Undermined is underused in this context. If I'm saying what is the meaning of undermine? Anybody has an idea? Basically, undermine is, when you reduce the effectiveness or you underuse something, that's when you call in this context, it is underused. So undermine. If they undermine, why will they be forced? If they underuse their supplies, why will they be forced to return to England? So you can eliminate automatically option B, C, and D. Hence, option A is your answer. Did you understand now what was I meaning by saying diction and register, how they go hand in hand? Got it? Understood? Hello? Am I audible or not
Yes, ma'am.
audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that is what is the meaning of diction and register. Then come to come to something called as idioms. Now, idioms are not something that you think you were taught in school. Those idioms are not tested here. What idioms are actually tested here are the idioms related to how do I explain? Idioms basically related to prepositions. Okay, that's the normal logic here. With prepositions is what idioms are related. So certain words have fixed prepositions. Okay, specifically the verbs. Okay, so what happens is if you use the wrong preposition with them, the sentence will sound correct. Okay, but it is not actually correct. Look at the example here. A familiarity in the most common programming languages is useful for anyone who wants to pursue a career in information technology. Okay, so a familiarity, usually the preposition that's common with the word familiarity is the word with or the preposition with. Okay, so we have certain fixed prepositions that you're supposed to be using. Are you understanding my point? Are you getting what I'm trying to explain? So when you see here, a familiarity in the most common programming, in the most common programming languages. Familiarity in the most common does not make sense. You're not familiar in someone. So whenever you have such sentences, now break them down into simpler sentences. If I have to understand which preposition will go with the word familiarity, the most simple way to do it is, by just saying, by breaking it into simpler sentences. So if I say my familiarity in Ambika, In Ambika means, that means I am being familiar in Ambika, inside Ambika. That does not make sense. So it has to be with Ambika. Did you understand my point? So that's the logic that you have to understand. Okay, so for that, we have certain set of fixed prepositions with fixed words given here. You have to, literally by heart these words. Okay, they are the most common ones that come in your exam. And then we have a set of commonly confused words. Okay, there is a whole list given here, and the meaning of each one is given. You have to just, what do you call, go through all of this as well. Okay, you have to literally by heart it. That's all you can do. And then there is one trick here, to versus ing. So what trick is this basically? This trick basically tells you that whenever in SAT exam, there is a to form that is underlined. Okay, there is a to form that is to form of verb that is underlined. You can simply replace it with the ing form. And whenever the ing form is underlined, you can simply replace it with the to form. Understood? Did you get my point? Did you get what I'm trying to explain? Hello, kids. Are you all listening or not listening? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's what is. Kiran sir, there's a lot of, I don't know, you were trying to say something, but I couldn't hear you. So the logic is whenever the to form of verb is given, so this is a trick, okay? But that does not mean you will blindly follow it. Got my point? You have to also you have to, like just go through and read the sentence. Don't blindly follow it. Please remember, don't blindly follow any trick, okay? It's just good for you if you will, be able to just cross check it once. Got it? Understood? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's dictions, idioms, and register for you guys. Okay, I'll send the PDF in the group. You can just check it out. Yeah, that's it. Register, I just explained you, is nothing but tone of the passage. And then there is an exercise. You can do that as well. Okay. Now, for anyone, subject verb agreement is left? For any one of you, is subject verb agreement pending? Please speak up. Is it pending for anyone? Subject verb agreement. So I'll take that as a no. Okay. Now then let's move on to the next topic called as transitions. Varun, for you all the topics are done?
No, ma'am.
You have not sent me the list of topics that are not done. I asked you to send it, right?
I'll send it after the class, ma'am.
If you send it after the class, how will I understand and how will I plan things, Varun? Keaton has sent me because he was left with the maximum number of topics. Out of the topics he sent me, I think I've already covered shorter is better, and now I'm going to cover transitions. So if you will let me know if there's any topic before transitions that has to be done for you, I'll do it. No, there's a reason why the faculty tells you to do a certain thing at that very moment, right? Please send it right now. Do you have the list of topics or do you want me to send it to you?
Ma'am, send it to me.
Yeah, because you did not bother noting it down, right?
Yes.
Very good. Serves me right to have a student like you. Please check. Check and let me know what all topics are left. Okay. Meanwhile, we'll just start with transitions here by the time Varun messages me. And Varun, please message me on WhatsApp. Okay. Now let's start with something called as transitions. It's a very, very important topic. Okay. And a very easy topic. Many people get scared of this topic unnecessarily, but it's just a logic-based topic here. Okay. So understand what are transitions. Transitions are basically, words that help us determine the relationship between two sentences. Okay, between two sentences. So there are many positions where a transition can be placed, but for SAT, we have a certain positions and I'll just explain those positions. The first position is between two sentences. So sentence one, period, sentence two, when this is the position given, right here in between, that is after the period and just at the starting of the sentence two, transition one, comma, sentence two. Sometimes what happens, sentence one, comma, transition, comma, sentence two. This also happens. When this sort of a situation arises, that is, when a transition is between two commas, what happens here in this context is, whenever a transition is between two commas, what happens here is, you have to just remember, like I have already taught this in punctuations, anything between two commas is treated as non-essential. So when something is treated as non-essential, what happens is, when something is treated as non-essential, simple logic that you can have here is, if this transition is removed, these two sentences should still make sense. Understood? Got it? So that is your, second position. The third position is at the start of sentence one. So transition, comma, sentence one, period, sentence two. Now, because the transition is placed here at the beginning of sentence one, suppose there is a sentence before S1 also. Let's consider it S0. So while solving such questions, just remember one thing, to read S0 as well, to understand if this transition is showing the relationship between sentence one and sentence two, or is it showing the relationship between S0 and S1? Similarly, something similar to this. Understood? Did you get my point? Are you all understanding? Then the next position is sentence one, period, sentence two, comma, transition. Okay. So again, for this also, remember, if there is a sentence three, so you have to cross check if this transition is showing the relationship between sentence one and sentence two, or sentence two and sentence three. Got it? Just remember these positions. When you will solve the questions, you will understand. Okay, you'll get even more clarity. Just remember these positions. And many people think that transition at the end of the sentence does not mean that it's an independent clause. I'm sorry to break it to you, but always a transition at the end of the sentence, it means that it's an independent clause, at least according to American English, because that's their style of speaking. So suppose, somebody asks you, are you free tonight? So you say, no, I'm not free tonight. I'm free tomorrow morning, though. Okay. So tomorrow morning, though, people think that, there's going to be some other sentence that's going to be added, because we are not familiar with American English. But no, instead of using though in between of the sentence, they use though at the end of the sentence. Are you getting my point? So whenever there is a transition at the end of the sentence, don't think that it's a dependent clause. It's definitely an independent clause. Understood? Got my point? Am I clear? Now, coming to so we have understood what is a transition and what are the positions where, a transition can be placed. Now understand something, that we're talking about the relationship. Okay. So this relationship between two sentences can be divided into three types. First one is continue. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. The first type is called as a continuer. Okay. First type is a continuer. The second type is called as a contradictor. Okay. And the third type is called as the cause and effect. Okay. Now, what is a continuous relationship? What's a contradictory relationship? And what is a cause and effect in relationship? How do you determine it? 1 second, please. So So what happens here when it comes to continuous relationship, whenever you know any sentence has the same subject and you're just adding information about that particular subject used in the previous sentence, or you're giving an example, okay, or when you're giving an example, such sentences show a continuous relationship. So basically one sentence is the continuation of the other sentence, okay, or when you're determining a sequence of steps or events, like for example, when you're using when you're explaining the steps to bake a cake, okay, so what happens, you say firstly take a container, clean it and make sure that it's dry, then you add all the dry ingredients. So that word then is actually a transition there, a continuous transition there, because it is showing a sequence of things that are happening. Are you understanding my point? So what is the basic essence to understand that it's a continuous? That basically the previous sentence that is already existing, you're just adding information, giving an example or describing a sequence of things, okay, or you're just somehow directly or indirectly you're just adding information, or you're putting some emphasis on the previous sentence. The subject does not change at all, nor does the nature of the sentence change. That's what is called as a continuous. Okay, that relationship is usually called as continuous relationship. Then we have something called as the contradictor. Contradictor, very true to its word, basically both the sentences are opposite to each other. Okay, when I say opposite to each other, what does it basically mean? It basically means that if I have to say, I was sleeping, my sister was dancing. Okay, so opposite, right? So you just add a comma and but. Got it? I was sleeping, but my sister was dancing. Or the same sentence. So the same sentence can also be, even though I was sleeping, comma, my sister was dancing. Okay, so what happened here? Even though is nothing but a transition. Got it? Understood? So it is showing a contradictory relationship between both the sentences. The best way to understand that is, she worked hard for her exams, but she failed. So if she worked hard for her exams, she's supposed to pass, but she failed. So when two sentences are completely opposite to each other, that's when you call something as a contradictory relationship. Understood? So the best way to remember this contradictory relationship is, input is negative, then output will be positive. I'm not talking in terms of computers here. It's just one input in terms of action and the output of that. Okay. And if the input is positive, then the output is negative. Just remember, two sentences which are opposite to each other come under the category of contradictors. Now, what is cause and effect? Okay. Cause and effect, what happens basically with cause and effect is, you have two sentences, where one sentence is the cause and the other is the effect of that sentence. So look at this. Because she studied well, comma, she passed in her exams. Okay, so what does it mean? She studied well and she passed in her exam. So either the cause of her passing is because she studied well, or the effect of her studying well is that she passed. Any which way, one is the cause and the other is the effect. Understood? Did you get my point? So what happens, like in contradictors, one is positive, the other is negative. No, in cause and effect, it's not like that. If the input is positive, okay, then the output also is positive. Okay, but the input is negative, then the output also is negative. That's the major difference between a contradictor and a cause and effect. Contradictor and cause and effect, people get confused. They don't remember this logic. Contradictor means they need to be completely opposite to each other. Cause and effect means if there is a positive cause, the effect also will be positive. If there is a negative cause, the effect will be negative. Now you will say, ma'am, it's not necessary that always if a person, studies well, they will pass. So how do you define that relationship? Then that relationship will come under cause and will come under contradictors automatically, because the result is not something that was supposed to be. So automatically a cause and effect relationship goes away there when the input is positive but the output is negative. Suppose the question says, the sentence is, she studied well, she failed in her exam. So then we go by this logic. Even though she studied well, she failed in her exam. So that sentence, so if it's not a cause and effect, because the input is positive and the output is negative, then automatically it's a contradictor. Did you understand my point? Did you get what I'm trying to explain? Did you understand? Speak up, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that is what is the transition. Now, how to answer your transition questions? See, in SAT, the topics are very simple, grammar topics. What matters the most is the application of those topics. You should be able to understand how to answer those questions, or how do you apply the concept that you have learned. Which transition? The best way to answer transition questions is just don't read the sentence with the transition. Read both the sentences without the transition. Understand, do they belong to the category of continuous, contradictor, and cause and effect, and then choose your transition word. Did you understand? If you will read the sentence with the transition, what will happen is you will get confused. Okay, so whenever there is a transition question at hand, remember, read both the sentences without the transition and then you answer. Now, your question might be, ma'am, what if there are two transitions from the same category? Then how do we choose? That will never happen. If that happens, that means that particular category can be eliminated directly. So both those options can be eliminated. In the SAT exam, they will never ask you to choose between the same transitions. I mean, transitions that belong to the same category. That's what I'm essentially trying to explain. Got my point? Am I clear? Any doubts still here? Anyone? Then see here, we have a list of continuous, contradictors, and cause and effect given to you. You just have to by heart this table. If you remember which word belongs to which category, that's sufficient for you. Okay. And then this how to do transition questions that I've just explained to you. Then there's one rule of double transition. You're not supposed to use two transitions in between in between two sentences. Look here. Although the tomato is actually a fruit, but many people believe that it is a vegetable. So this but and although both are used here in this context. You cannot use both, you have to use one of them only. So you'll either use although or you'll use but. Got my point? So you can use only one transition. And then there is this rule of no transition. Okay, no transition rule. So what it basically says is, when in all your options, okay, suppose option A, B, C, and D are given. A, B, C have a transition, but option D does not have a transition. Okay, so the no transition rule says that it's a trick wherein 95% of the time you can opt for the no transition rule. That is that you can choose option D directly, but once just cross check it. Are you understanding my point? That's the no transition rule. Got it? Now, for the table that I showed you above, the glossary is given here. If you don't know the meaning of any word, you can simply just, see the glossary here. It's given with examples and you can use it. And then there are two exercises given to you. Am I clear? Solve them so that you can, get a clarity.